Hey guys, and welcome back to the Franchise Tag Podcast, Season 3, Episode 3, flipping that 3 around and everything. We are wherever you get your podcast, just as a friendly reminder. We are on Amazon, Apple, wherever, like literally wherever. Spotify as well, of course. Uh, Anywhere you get your podcast, we're there. Gonna get right into things with a quick week 2 recap of the events that happened this past week, some of the weird things that happened, a lot of injuries and such. And then we're gonna get into a bit of a panic meter segment. How loud is the noise for some teams that have
hmm
not been off to the hottest starts? Then get into some week 3 stuff. And then, as always, set it off. So, would you like to take us into our week 2 recap, starting with Thursday Night Football?
Yeah, see, I have one key stat for this Dolphins at Bills game, and it was I think around midway through the third quarter when the broadcast really started to focus in on what Tua's average depth of target was throughout the game, and how it was negative zero point 0.5 yards the line of scrimmage. Now, of course, after that, he actually targeted someone who was 10 yards downfield, and it was like, whoa, that's the deepest completion of the night for Tua is this 10-yard first down. But man, like the offensive play calling in that was it's like there's no trust anymore. Like there's no trust for Tua to safely put the ball downfield to really be able to evaluate much. It's a bunch of one read things. It's like, okay, we're gonna throw this screen no matter what. Like it's okay, we're looking, and there's this immediate check down that's 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage that he's gonna go to and watch them go down and pick up, 1 maybe 2 yards. But at an average, having a really poor depth of target is like just it really just to me says, it's kind of like that Bo Nix thing where like last season, he's not targeting downfield, but it's the system, and you want your rookie to get a good flow. This is not Tua's rookie year. You're trying to establish a flow with a veteran quarterback who should be past this point of his career where he really needs like these not even dink and dunks, because you can take dinks and dunks and really get yourself a quarterback in a rhythm. But this is a quarterback who's like needing to be spoon fed completions behind the line of scrimmage to have playmakers, and that's always how it's been for the Miami Dolphins under Tua. But before it was like, all right, we're gonna hit this drag route and it's gonna go and pick up 30. Now it's literally just like devolved into we can't throw past the line of scrimmage on a majority of our throws without, feeling like we're putting the ball in danger. And that's just like what are you going to do with that as you move through the season, as you try to see him evolve? Like just and it's not even just this game. He's 35th out of all quarterbacks for average depth of target. They aren't putting the ball downfield. It's just not really working out. And competitive game, 31-21, but at no point were you thinking, yes, Tua is going to lead this game clinching drive. No, it was check down, throw behind the line of scrimmage, and we're punting. And that was the flow of the game for the on the Dolphin side of things.
Yeah, and we talk about it quite a bit, or we did last year at least with the Broncos and Bo Nix and Sean Payton and that whole system and how we really aren't fans of it. And ultimately, I mean, we can get into the whole Broncos discussion later, but this year it's not looking as good for the Broncos. And with the Dolphins, it's almost like they went from having a team where they could call up deep shots and have the checkdowns as a backup plan, and then they realized, hey, these deep shots aren't really working. Like they're hitting at like a 2% clip, and
Hmm.
really the checkdowns to Devon Achan are the ones that are getting us a ton of yards, and they just abandoned the deep shot entirely. Like they were like, well, if our yards are getting gained by Devon Achan on swing passes anyways, we might as well draw up the play to him. But the reason it was working so well is because you supplemented it with deep shots. And so the team
hmm
had to respect you deep, had to play too high, had to cover Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, obviously, and then any other receiver you had that was a little faster. And then that left a little bit of more space underneath for Achan to work or for another running back to work. That just doesn't happen anymore because nobody respects the deep shot because Tua can't throw it 20 yards down the field. He tried to. He tried to throw deep on one play, and it was like it looked like a 40-yard pass, like the receiver was going to be 40, 50 yards down the field, and Tua got it like 25 yards down the field. And that was his like full strength launch of the ball. So when your quarterback physically cannot throw downfield and you're limited to these swing passes and teams expect them, it's just not the same explosive offense we've come to expect from a Dolphins offense with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and Achan and um, Jalen Wright, who's another faster running back. And like this team is
Mm-hmm.
built around speed and getting downfield and then also making plays in open space, but they can't get open downfield. They can't throw downfield. And so the underneath plays have no space to work with. So it's just what they've been built on is not what they are still building on.
Yeah. They have all of that speed, necessary, but when the play calling is this, easy to boil down into just like, all right, here are the concepts they're going to run against us. Safety, like, don't be afraid. They can't throw it over you. The safeties are coming downhill a lot more, and that's a lot more bodies in the box. That's a lot more bodies coming at the line of scrimmage for a running back to have to, maneuver and beat. And so now you're just really stuck in you're kind of pigeonholed, and that's what they're doing. They're pigeonholing him. They're playing it safe with the play calling, and maybe they let that loose, and maybe he dials up some deeper shots and is successful at that. However, through 3 and actually no, he's been there for how long? Like 6 years. He's
Yeah.
he's been there some time, injured, of course. So off and on with the actual game time, but we know what Tua is, and it's not really going to change, especially when the trend is going downward as fast as it is right now at the start of the season.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I mean, the Bills look great. I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about there, but I
Yeah,
mean, James
yeah,
Cook
yeah.
looks amazing. Josh Allen's doing his thing. The weapons are the Bills' weapons, where they're not really all that, but it works because it's Josh
Hmm.
Allen and we can get into Sunday, move off of Thursday night football. And the first thing I want to talk about here is just the amount of botched special teams plays. We had the Packers have a kick blocked in that Browns game, and then the Browns end up winning it because they recovered that blocked kick and then get set up on a do you remember last year when the Falcons had that spike that was just basically instant and they set the ball, the ref came up, touched it, and they got the spike off in like
Hmm.
basically no time? It was basically the same thing for the Browns, but it was odd because the center spotted the ball 2 yards back from where it should have been, and the ref touched it and was like, "Yep, that's good," and then they spiked the ball and got the field goal off. So um, it was a you know good final drive by the Browns after that blocked kick, but just the fact that it came down to blocking the Packers kick to win the game, and it was the Browns doing that. Then we get into the Rams Eagles game where the Rams have a kick to win the game, and Jordan Davis blocks it, picks it up, and runs it back for a
Yeah.
touchdown. He hit over 18 miles an hour on that run, big old Jordan Davis. And then the Tampa Bay game, the Bucks ended up winning that one, but they had a kick to tie it, and it got blocked, and the Jets ended up going up on that, and then they ended, Baker's had a couple comeback drives this season. I think it's been 3 games, 3 game-winning drives for Baker, but
Yeah,
still
he's had
the
a good few of them since being a Buck. Yeah.
but still since I mean 3 games that had blocked field goals that led to scoring that were then changing the game. I mean, like I said, the Bucks game didn't really change. They were able to come back, but it forced the Bucks to make that comeback. And it's
Yeah.
it's just like a crazy week of, we see a few blocked kicks a year. Like,
Yeah, and then weren't there a couple of punts that were blocked even in like later slate, like Seahawks Saints, and I want to say there was one more, but I might be misremembering.
that Seahawks Saints
But
game was just insane. I mean, the Saints are a dumpster fire, man.
yeah, really just like Seahawks, you don't have much faith in, and I'm I was like lukewarm on them, like they could be good, they could not be because they just had a bunch of things fall apart and they put pieces in and we don't know how those pieces are going to work out. whenever you play the Saints, though, I mean, everything's gonna just gel together. It's gonna look great.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say Sam Darnold's proving me wrong, and then I realized it was against the Saints. So is he really?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Everything clicks. I will say though, you're calling them botch special team plays. Uh, I think they're just fantastic special team plays on the opposite side. Because I mean, when you watch even the Jets like blocked and returned for a touchdown one, like that's just an insane play. You can't really, and same with the Eagles. Like this is game on the line, big plays happening, and what's the kicker meant to do? Chase down and tackle.
well,
Um, once
yeah,
it
I
gets
mean,
through the line there, it's it's more so like the blocking you could say was botched, but I think that it's just great plays on the defending special teams half of that.
yeah, I agree. The Packers one was a low trajectory, and it was a short kick, so McManus did not have to kick it that low, and that's what led to the block. And I would imagine it was something similar for the other teams, where it was a bit of a lower trajectory than they needed, which led to an easy block. The Jordan Davis one, he split up the middle, and that typically,
Mm-hmm.
if a guy up the middle is blocking a kick, it is a low trajectory, and normally you see that on longer kicks. But both the Packers and Rams kicks were not longer, and they were just too low. So I guess that's why I dictated them botched more than great. But absolutely shout out to the to the uh, defending special teams.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll get into an afternoon. We'll get into an afternoon slate game with the Bears kind of like you know laying the wood on the Cowboys. Like there wasn't a whole lot of scoring outside of the first half. Luckily, the first half is what I watched, and so I got to see pretty back and forth game. Um, it's like the Cowboys are really predicating themselves on like this power running so far this year because everyone was doubting the running back groups that they got and the offensive line and all of the offensive line stuff is coming together. However, in a game where you lose CeeDee Lamb before he can take a target, that's not going to really produce a great game for the Cowboys. That takes a lot of the game planning for the Cowboys. Um, and so on the opposite half of that, it's a 4 touchdown game for Caleb Williams, nearly 300 yards, and everything gelled. You had two giant deep shots for who was it?
There's one for Luther
Burden,
Burden.
Burden, right?
Yeah, that was
Burden had
a
some
flea flicker.
burners. Yeah, the flea flicker, the Ben Johnson special, all of those trick plays that he would run with us, with the Lions, and then you're just having deep shot, just win on the outside, and that's because the Dallas Cowboys had some injuries, of course, to their secondary. So, really took advantage of that, and they came away with their first win on the year. And we'll get into it as we go into our segment later on about these 1 and 2 teams, these teams with negative records at the moment, as we're in week 3, and that's half the league. Um, but I mean, what did you get to see any of that game? Do you have any like overbearing opinions on like these teams outside of what we might get into in that segment?
Uh, Not really. I mean, I saw the flea flicker. I think that Caleb Williams is kind of getting like coming into his own a little bit. We're starting to see a little bit more of the comfortability of him in the Ben Johnson system and Ben Johnson's comfortability to call some of those more outlandish plays. I mean, a flea flicker is
Mm-hmm.
not like super outlandish, especially by Ben Johnson's standards. But we're
Yeah.
seeing the use of Roma Dunze go up, which is always nice. As a Roma Dunze fantasy owner, great to see. And we're seeing Luther Burden, who I don't know if I ever said it live, but I kind of expected him to be a bigger part of the offense because he is a draft pick by this regime. So you kind of
Mm-hmm.
always, the early draft picks by any said regime typically hold a little bit more value. So you've got a second round pick that's used on a receiver when you've already got two solid receivers in DJ Moore and Roma Dunze. You kind of expect that pick to be utilized, and it's nice to see him get his chances. I actually didn't see anything about Colson Loveland. Do you know if is he cooking or was he kind of a non-factor in this one?
he's he's working as a tight end too, and Ben likes his tight end twos for the blocking aspect of things. He had a big catch in this one. He had like a 30 yarder. Outside of that, though, it is kind of seeing like the production you would see out of a tight end two. Um, it is just kind of these. you're scheming it for other guys, but this guy just became wide open on the back end. So he's getting those targets, but it's not any like amazing gains or anything like that outside of his 30-yard catch this week. Um, but yeah, I mean they're working in their guys slowly for sure. Like I imagine that they will be increasing the passing workload for Loveland as he's kind of been there as that second tight end blocking guy, as they continue to dive deeper into Ben Johnson's scheme. But as you had stated with like Caleb Williams, one of the things they mentioned on the broadcast that I liked a lot was, I think it was a touchdown pass. It might have just been a big play, but it was a Caleb Williams like pre-snap recognition of man coverage. Um, Basically, just saw the tight end, or maybe it was the slot wide receiver, and 15 yards off ball is the safety directly head up with them, and that's generally a man indicator. And so, lo and behold, that was a man indicator. It was a cover one, and I think that was the deep shot on the sideline to either roam out the gates or one of the Luther Burden ones. But yeah, just like, seeing the processing that's happening for Caleb Williams and that pre snap is definitely what like Ben Johnson was able to do so much with Jared Goff with was this is pre-snap stuff we're going to analyze, and then he sees man coverage, press corner, and he's going to go ahead and take that shot every day.
Yeah, and some of the unlearning of the Eberflus problems from Caleb Williams,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the learning of the Ben Johnson isms is always good to see. But we can get into Sunday night if you would like to with the Chiefs and Giants, a game that I fully expected to go the Chiefs' way, and did.
Yeah, like it still just doesn't look pretty for the Chiefs. Of course, it is the Giants, so it was going to be tough to not win that one. However, I will say not having any like big rushing from Patrick Mahomes and the fact that they relied on their running backs to do the running, that's a good sign. They weren't overly productive, but your leading rusher wasn't Patrick Mahomes getting flushed out of the pocket. So generally that's a good thing when your quarterback can stay in the pocket and continue to just hit receivers, whether or not they're catching it. Um, that's that's not on him. He's just got to throw the ball to him. One thing I do want to point out is Tyquan Thornton's, real like come into his own within this offense. He was never really a whole productive guy with the Patriots. You had stated, I think when Worthy went down that, hey, he's that same kind of archetype of guy. He might, get some of those reps that we would see Worthy get. And that's exactly true. I mean, he led the receiving for that game and they were sending him shots. Like he dropped one at like the 1 yard line. More, less so dropped. It didn't survive the ground um, when he's like laying his body out to make the catch. But he's got 9 targets. He's eclipsing the rest of the team, and I'm not sure if that's like Hollywood Brown probably gets some extra attention, bigger name than Tyquan Thornton. Travis Kelsey, of course, draws the attention that he does. So I'm not sure if it's just like like when a backup comes in for a week and then they ball out because nobody knows who the hell that guy was, and then the next week is like a lot worse. I'm not sure if it was just like Taekwon's like week for that. But seeing 9 targets go to the guy who's just filling in is definitely a sign that everywhere else was covered. I mean, Travis Kelsey is not really off to a slow start. We'll see what happens with him throughout the year, especially with so much media and so much focus on Travis Kelsey. Um, so we'll see how he adjusts to that throughout the year. But definitely seeing less of a focus on who you would expect for the Chiefs passing and the Chiefs run game not being that effective. It is just concerning as the Chiefs side of things. Now the Giants. Oh boy, I think we'll have a good piece about them in this segment coming up shortly.
Yeah. Um, Honestly, the whole Tyquan Thornton thing, like, obviously as a Patriots fan, there's a part of me that when I see a receiver go somewhere else and succeed, it hurts. But I don't
Jacoby
think
Myers.
right. That's a better example of success than Tyquan Thornton. I think he had the same exact problems he had in New England. It's just that the Chiefs system sets up a couple more deep shots than the Patriots ever did. So it's more of a thing of like, did he flash this week? Yeah, but he had 9 targets, caught 5 balls, and some of them were underneath catches. Like he still had those, not necessarily like huge drop issues, but he did have drop issues. He did not catch everything that came his way, and it's the same problem that we saw with him in New England, where like, yeah, he could get a deep shot, but in New England, we weren't throwing deep shots with Mac Jones. Like, so now that he has Mahomes, yeah, he does look a little better, but he's still showing some of those same issues that I saw from him in New England. And I don't think a 70-yard performance outdoes the years of issues that we've seen from him at the receiver position. And so as much as I'm like, yeah, good job, go Taekwon. Like I'm uninspired by the prospects of that for the future.
Yeah, it's definitely with like, if Worthy trends to coming back, I don't imagine they're going to keep them. Maybe they do keep them both out there to have some tricks run off of that as like, oh, you would expect it to go to Worthy, but here's going to go to Taekwon. Um, we could see that, but definitely not going to expect him to have a large role throughout the rest of the season, especially with Worthy coming healthy.
Yep. And then if you want to get into Monday Night Football and talk about your Lions and how they put belt to ass with the Ravens.
Yeah, well, it was still a close game, but damn, like this is a game that, of course, is just like nerve wracking waiting for it to happen. As a fan, like you're seeing how every stat is being thrown at you. Like, oh well, the Ravens actually have never lost wearing this uniform combination. It's like that doesn't effing matter. But like, why are you showing me this? This isn't helping my feelings. I think out of this game, like we're seeing two great quarterbacks go at each other, and despite being Lamar Jackson, he was quite contained. I mean, on the ground, he had some good runs, but for the most part, he was getting corralled. We had a QB spy on him for a good chunk of the game, and that's something that, like, even when we tried that in the past, never was effective because it's Lamar Jackson. He can beat most quarterback spies, but when we were running a great contain and the spies just kind of sitting there 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, watching him, staying lateral with him, it was just great defense against the Ravens, who we know can be an absolutely electric offense. Um, on the offensive side of things for the Lions, I mean, it felt like everything was coming right when we needed it to. Uh, it was like a 10-minute drive we had with like 17 plays, 98-yard drive. Like that's just efficient football. You're staying on the field. You're maintaining ball control and forcing Lamar Jackson to just kind of sit and wait. And I mean, David Montgomery absolutely ripped one, and the rushing game was in full effect this game with 4 touchdowns. And like out the gates, it was just kind of a very productive Lions game, despite seeing like pressure coming up. Goff was very surprisingly mobile within the pocket that was collapsing. Even took off for a couple of Vanilla Vic runs. But damn, like, despite the 7 sacks, like, you always talk about it. I feel like we always talk about it on the podcast. Lamar Jackson's pocket presence is insane. Like, he was staying alive in so many collapsing pockets so much longer than, an average quarterback would have. I mean, hell, there probably could have been like 13 sacks if it wasn't Lamar Jackson, but it was, and there was still 7. It's just a great show out from our defensive line, who, we are missing Davenport, we are missing Ali McNeil. So I'm just very excited going forward when we get that full defensive line, hopefully healthy, and the production off of that. I will say though, I think this says more about the Ravens than it does the Lions. This win. What do you think?
Yeah. Um, well, the David Montgomery run, man, I don't think I've ever seen Marlon Humphrey run faster in my life than on that run, hawking him down. And then something
Yeah.
you mentioned, pocket presence, reminded me that as much as it pains me to do it, I want to give Patrick Mahomes his props for his pocket presence on Sunday night because he was dealing, man. Like he was navigating that pocket perfectly and creating so much time to find open guys. And the couple of times where he was like over 5 seconds snap to throw was just purely on him and being able to navigate around not just any defensive line, but Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau. And honestly, I feel like for most of the game, it was those four on the line, and it was Burns or Carter like playing an inside role almost like a D tackle esque position, and then it was the other two obviously on the outside and Dexter Lawrence up the true middle, and just for Mahomes to be able to navigate that pocket. I mean, we know he's good. We know he's a good quarterback, but to see that happen and to see him cook that much was really interesting. I mean, one of those was a launch downfield that led to a defensive pass interference, and then the other one was, like a 20-yard catch to a wide open receiver because it was a scramble drill. But it's just like watching guys like that in the pocket is really insane, and it peeved me a little bit because it was the Chiefs, but it was still beautiful pocket management and movement. So wanted to give those props while I still can.
Mm-hmm. Um, One other thing I wanted to point out for this Ravens game, Mark Andrews, man, like, we didn't see a big workload from him to start off the season, and we know how the end of his season went last year, and just to come out really just, I mean, he had 2 touchdowns, 91 yards, tight end, like, he balled out, and a lot of it was not even like bad coverage. Like, there was a couple plays where, you know, he got open early, uh, you know, very early into the play, and Brian Branch has to like catch up to him and try to break it up, and he's just a bigger body than Brian Branch, so he's not gonna drop that pass. It's really just like I'm glad to see him still producing. He's coming back as opposed to like, oh, now Isaiah Likely's gonna come back, and Mark Andrews is fully gonna go to the wayside, um, like we may have thought at the end of last season after his performance there. So I think it's good signs were shown for the Ravens. However, they weren't able to control the clock as much as they usually do because I mean they didn't run the ball nearly as much as the Lions did, and so the Lions were the ones in control of the clock. Everything. I feel like we just took wind out of the sails of the Ravens. And not to say that if you force Lamar to pass, it's not going to go well for them. I mean, guys got the best passer rating in NFL history. It's just that they are so predicated off of running the ball and power running and managing the clock. And it's also what the Lions are predicated off of. So when those two things had to go head to head, there's only one that was going to survive at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's good to see the Lions kind of get back to form after week one and after losing all their coaches, like most of their staff left in the offseason. So it's good to see them kind of return to form week 2 and 3.
Yeah, on the road too.
But now we can
yeah,
get on into the segment if you would like to. All right, cool.
Done.
And now, everybody for the podcast, welcome to the segment. We will be introing this like it's a regular video because this is one of our segment videos. If you're not watching those, that's okay. If you're just here for the podcast, that's a very interesting way to do things. But if you are watching the segments, we appreciate you as well. All right. Let's see, how do I want to do this? Okay. In 3, 2, 1. How loud is the noise for your team? If your team is 1-2 or 0-3, how loud are the fans calling for people's heads, calling for players' heads, calling for a new quarterback, calling for the coach to be fired? How loud is it? That's what this tier list is here to decide. Everybody who has not or who does not have a winning record right now is going to be sorted into this 5-tier tier list, starting with eardrums bursting. That's the absolute loudest that it could be. This is a bad look. And then all the way down to a library where obviously the noise is very quiet. People are not concerned about the team. So
and I'll be interested to see how many we end up putting in that library, given these are teams that have lost 2 out of the first 3 games at minimum. So we'll go ahead. We'll start off with one that won't be in the library. We're going to go ahead and start off with the Saints here. Where do they sit on your...
Actually, this is interesting. I would honestly put them at the heavy metal concert more than eardrums bursting because I don't think there's any one scapegoat that the fans would be calling for. The fans knew this would be a
Yeah,
bad season. So it's just kind of like an echoing of the off-season yelling, if you will. So that's why I
yeah.
would kind of
It's
have
not
them.
Kellen Moore's fault. He's not getting yelled at about it. First year, like he's doing the best he can. Um, they came into the season not really having a quarterback, but I feel like no one was delusional enough to expect a whole lot out of the Saints. So no one's delusional enough to be that upset when they're off to an 0-3 start, and likely gonna have a few more of those losses pile up.
Yeah, we good with not putting them in eardrums bursting then?
Oh, I definitely don't think that they're one of the worst situations we've got on this. So I mean, situation wise, horrible team. However, for like Kellen Moore and ownership and all that, I think they're sitting pretty.
Okay.
Uh, this is what they expected. Next up, we'll be bouncing around from winless to having a win. We're gonna go Broncos.
Okay.
Now, the Broncos coming off of a pretty good season, pretty good rookie season, out of Bo Nix. Where do you think they sit?
Personally, I was never a fan of Bo Nix. I was never a fan of Sean Payton. You put them together, and shocker, I'm not a fan of the team. But it worked last year. The fact that it's not working this year is very alarming. I would put them at a minimum at 109 decibels, if not a little
Yeah,
higher.
I think I haven't seen enough about it to really put them higher, but 109 decibels, that's amply loud. If you're not up to date with your decibel scale, probably about 90 is like big crowd noise, no average crowd noise. So this is a little bit louder than that, and I think that the Broncos can slot in there quite well. Next up, we can go ahead with the Titans. I have them probably under 109 decibels. I have them sitting at a kid's party because, like the Kellen Moore thing going on with that, it's a little louder there. But, like, I almost feel like the expectation was having the first overall pick this season. It's like one of them has to give. I feel like there's just no talent around Cam Ward. So I can't really say, oh, it's pretty loud over there. They really suck. Because it feels like everyone was in agreement. Oh yeah, no, there's no talent. The Saints, you have talent there. There's pieces there that were still good and they've been there for a while, but they're not producing wins. What
Yeah.
do you feel?
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that especially coming off a horrible season, the noise cannot be too loud. Um, and then I would actually like to get into a pick of my own for a bit,
Woohoo!
or a couple of my own. And first up, I want to talk Dolphins, 0-3. I think their eardrums are absolutely bursting.
Mm-hmm. This is probably, I mean, they lost to the Bills last, and it was the most competitive game somehow. But it just, as we stated at the top of the podcast, which if you're watching this as just this segment of the podcast, we release the podcast tomorrow, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to just go ahead and if you're watching this day of release, just go ahead, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you'll get that podcast right to your subscriptions. But getting into my thoughts on the Dolphins, I definitely think that they're right there, eardrums bursting, because they've built up this regime, and McDaniels has been in control so long to really shape the team how he wants. And then this is the production we're seeing out of them after, years and years of the team getting better and adding talent. So, they're going to have some blood running down their jawline here, in my eyes.
Yeah, for sure. Then let's go into the Patriots, my personal team. I would
Mm-hmm.
put them at a metal concert. I think the slow start they're off to is just really bad with all the off-season hype and the I wouldn't say victory lap I took after the off-season, but the hype that I had for them personally at least after what they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely like they can turn it around at this point, but I think even with what you were telling me on Sunday, like, why is Ramondre Stevenson in the game here? Why does he get a second opportunity to fumble this ball away? This is not even second opportunity. This has been an ongoing problem for Ramondre, and yet it's just seems like they're okay with having a slightly mediocre performance there and not really giving opportunities to other backs. I would put them there as well because you do have new regime, a lot of hype, a lot of money spent in the offseason. This isn't a Titans, this wasn't somebody coming in and like, well, crap, this is what I got. Like, they have a lot of pieces, they paid for a lot of pieces, and then they drafted, good, promising pieces. So why aren't you having a better start? Why isn't the play calling better? And, I don't think, I think it's just the caliber of the losses that is putting them here. It's not that they've lost these games, it's that they've lost them those ways.
Yeah, and only win is to the Dolphins, which again, their
Hmm.
eardrums are bursting. But if you would like to pick a couple teams,
You know what? While we're on the AFC East, the New York Jets. I had middled expectations for them. I didn't think that it was going to be a 180 turnaround year after year, but I do believe in Aaron Glenn, and I did state, before the season, like, this might not be a super competitive team in the record, but they're going to be competing and have these close games. And yeah, they maybe didn't have a close game last week, but
they did.
I well, okay, 2 weeks ago, their week two loss.
All right.
Um, but yeah, I think I I kind of want to put them in kids party with the Titans, but they're enough talented of a roster where I could see going higher. Where do you feel?
I'm hovering between 109 and Kids Party. Like I feel like they're like a gymnastics competition. Like there's not that much yelling, but it's there.
it's
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 louder than a Kids
majority
Party.
quiet, but there's gonna be like a little pop when someone does a cool flip.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm okay putting them in Kids Party though. I feel like with the flashes that we saw from Justin Fields, and then the fact that he's hurt now, so we can kind of
mhm.
assume that a little bit of the blame is going to be placed on the injury, and not they're not going to yell about the injury or anything like that. You know.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot for him because if if it was Fields playing every week and it wasn't great performances, like we've seen him for 2 games, and one was great and one was not. So we need just a bigger sample size with the true starter out there. But next up, we'll get into the Panthers. I want to hear your thoughts on this first.
I think the noise is very loud for the Panthers, but I don't think it's necessarily all on Bryce Young. And especially after that 30-point win over the Falcons, I think the noise is coming down. Exiting week two, I probably would have had them at a metal concert. Right now, I think 109. It's calmed down a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, and we're seeing some success. I could also see Kids Party if we're seeing week three as the truest representation of them, and not really focusing on the uh, the first 2 weeks as and kind of seeing those more as a fluke than anything. So I'll defer to you between
Yeah,
those two.
this is definitely a team that's been coming down on this. I mean, after the week one, you probably would have had them eardrums bursting. Um, and then week two, you had a great Bryce Young performance. You probably would have dropped that down into metal concert. So I'm feeling like 109 decibels. They got their first win, so this is another big reason to knock them down. But there's gonna be this noise about them because coming into the season, I mean, they have a fairly talented roster. They're not one of the worst rosters, and they definitely should be performing better than they are, at least in my opinion. So I think 109 is a good level for them to sit at. Now I feel like we're kind of dwindling on the teams that have bigger question marks, but
Yeah, I think
I think
real quick we can quick fire through two of them if you'd like, the two kind of
yeah,
outliers on this list,
mm-hmm,
and that's the Ravens and Chiefs. I mean, it's a library there. There's no concern.
yeah,
Slow start,
they're right there
it's
next to
whatever.
each other, playing footsies under the table. Like they're sitting in the library. It's an empty library outside of them, at least I would imagine. Still looking at the rest of the people here,
Yeah, no,
but
nobody else is in a library right now.
yeah, everyone else has got something going on.
Yeah,
And to add into the something, we'll go ahead and get right into it. The Giants.
I
Where do
think
you think they are?
so. I think the eardrums are bursting, and it's not necessarily because I think they are the worst team ever, but I think it's because Russ needs to take a seat on the bench. I think it needs to be Jameis Winston throwing to Malik Neighbors 10 times a game, or it needs to be Jackson Dart getting his opportunities. But you need somebody
Yeah,
that's not just a middling game manager, and that's all that Russ is. So I would have them in eardrums bursting pretty easily.
I mean the eardrums were bursting this past week when they're playing Kansas City, and they put Jackson Dart in for one play, and then they bring Russ right back out. It's like you could hear it. It's undeniable noise coming, and of course, the narrative now is like, okay, when do they sit Russ? because you have a coach whose job is on the line. It felt like his job was on the line even a couple of seasons ago, but then they had a great year and they turned some stuff around. And then Danny Dimes is out of there, and now they've got what feels like it's going to be a rotating door of quarterbacks. So it's loud because you want to see wins start coming in, and if it's with this quarterback, the next quarterback, doesn't really matter. I think that the noise is especially there because you have this first round pick sitting on the bench at the moment.
Another team that I think it's also very loud for, and I'm curious to see where you would put them, is the Texans.
Yeah, um, man, this is a team. It's so talented on defense, and the offensive line is the biggest problem on the offensive side of things. We saw them make it worse by trading away Tunsil. Now, granted, he was kind of in his own fall off at the time, so who knows what he would be doing right now for the team if he was there, and how much better they might look or might not. But it's just like an offense with no gel, and the wasting away of a defense that is absolutely phenomenal. I would also put them. It's like the pieces are there, but until the offensive line manages to produce anything, they have to be in eardrums bursting. Like no one's calling for the coach, no one's calling for CJ Stroud,
Yeah.
but the noise is loud about the offensive line. Because if you recognize that the offensive line is the problem, I don't see how you can yell about the quarterback there.
Yeah, I've seen a little more yelling about the quarterback there, I won't lie. I've seen a little bit more like, where is the CJ Stroud we saw in his rookie season? And I can't say I disagree. I can't say that that's a question that I don't have, because it does look a little worse for CJ Stroud, and I'm sure a lot of the blame does fall on the offensive line and the lack of Tank Dell, but a 5'8" receiver is not going to make a quarterback better, and uh, offensive line, sure, like, but CJ Stroud's got to do better, and I feel like that's where the eardrums are bursting from, is from obviously the bad O line play, but then CJ Stroud not overcoming it as the kind of player we expected him to be after his rookie year. But next, let's go Browns. Let's go
We're
Browns
running low
next.
here.
Yeah.
Wow. Man. After seeing the Browns beat the Packers, it's like, how is this happening? How did the Packers, who looked so great week 1 and 2, manage to lose that game? Like, I can't even be very loud because the Browns, they're another one of those teams, the lowest of low expectations. No the quarterback carousel once again, rotating door that we see as a possibility because they spent their draft picks on quarterbacks. I'm kind of sitting at kids party because like I feel like they're right in line with Titans, Jets, and like now the Browns. Like, yeah, the Titans and the Jets are both winless, and the Browns just managed one of the craziest wins over. Not even crazy in like how it occurred, just crazy in the opponent. And I feel like you can't really be upset as a Brown. You just won, and the team has been playing as expected. And I mean, hey, last week if nothing else, 2 weeks ago, they gave Derrick Henry a very low rushing game,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
can't
I
be that
think,
mad as a Browns fan.
see, I think they are actually in the library because they have no fans anymore, so there's no noise coming from anywhere. So
Yeah,
if
stands
you
are
look at
quiet.
that, it's very quiet in their stadium. Um, but yeah, I agree, Kids Party. And then we can get into the Falcons, I think, is the next one where
Mm-hmm.
I think it's getting kind of loud for them, especially after this past week losing 30-0 to the Panthers.
Yeah, the divisional aspect of that really drives that home. Um, like we've seen the changes, we've seen what's probably coming in, but you know, there's a firing coming out of this game, out of this loss.
Yeah.
As of 3 hours ago, they went ahead and they fired an assistant coach. So the noise has got to be pretty loud for you to start firing people. I don't care, what the opinions are in the building. If like they think, yeah, no, we still have a great roster, we still got great coaches. There was enough pressure from outside to cause someone to lose their job. and that's at bare minimum a metal concert. I don't think everything. I don't think the wheels are falling off, and it's going to be a winless season from this on. And I don't feel like they're trending upwards like I did with the Panthers, off the back of this win, or the Broncos, who we kind of put in that 109 decibel. So I feel like black metal is kind of where that metal concert's where they sit at.
All right. Then how about the Bears, especially after this past week? I
I
feel like
mean,
I
we
feel like
finally got a chance to see them gel, and this feels like it's kids' party. Like we knew it was going to take a while for this offense to gel, for Caleb to get it. Ben Johnson's, of course, got a very meticulous scheme that's got layers to it, and so the slow start doesn't feel like unexpected. And I think that kids' party is a pretty safe spot for it, uh, especially off the back of a pretty significant performance this past Sunday.
yeah, agreed. Now, two teams left, Cowboys and Raiders. Which would you like to get into first?
Well, we'll go ahead. We'll start off with the Raiders. They underwent a lot of changes in this offseason. I feel like the noise is probably about a metal concert because of the inefficiency of using their first pick of Ashton Genty. Um, and that's, again, as we pointed out with, the Texans and their performances, it's been an issue due to the the team's inability to have an offensive line produce really much of space for him. Because when he does have space to hit a hole and get to the line of scrimmage, he's generating some good yards. But when he doesn't, that's when we're not seeing really much of anything. And unfortunately for Ashton Genty, we're seeing that more often than we're seeing a hole be made. So I would have them at the metal concert. Where do you sit with them?
I can agree there. I had them probably at 109 rather than the metal concert, but I see the complaints and the inefficiencies of Ginty so far. I just think because it's such a new regime and it's new quarterback, new running back, and new head coach, so new coaching staff entirely. Like your entire
Mm-hmm.
offense has never played together before, and it's kind of an issue of uh, cohesiveness rather than an issue of the lack of talent. So that's why I'm a little leaning towards that 109 rather than the metal concert.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Gino hasn't been where they may have wanted him to be, but I get your points with you know, I would be okay with dropping them into 109 due to all the points you made about this being the first year for everything to go down and everything needs time to, of course, mesh together. So I'm okay with 109 if you are.
Okay. And then Cowboys, we've got a new coaching staff and an injured CD Lamb and no more Micah Parsons. And Jerry's still there. And as long as Jerry's there, there's going to be some eardrums bursting noise coming for, like, calling for his firing. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we should address more of like the on the field team, so coaches and players rather than owner, because we didn't take owner into account with any
the
of these other
the
teams.
noise doesn't change. There's always noise about Jerry Jones, so we can just it's basically white noise in the back of their mind by now.
True.
They don't care about it. It's the new noise that's the horns and stuff coming in, not just like this flat line in the background. Um, I feel like they've got a good team. I mean, they're better than expected with their run game. So there's certainly pieces of the team that you're seeing be better than you know average, better than what was advertised, and they were competitive in their matchups. Outside of this one to the Bears, which you lose CeeDee Lamb and you're going to lose some of that competitiveness. I think from injury you can't really raise the noise. No one's getting mad because CeeDee Lamb didn't produce. He didn't play. He got hurt. So I feel like this is almost kids party. Um, but there's always just that latent noise that about the Cowboys. They're such a big media, you know, team. Everyone's always talking about them in the media that it's perceived as being like a 109 decibel team, but in reality, I feel like it's just a kids party.
I can agree with that. I think that's fair. Um, it's quite the array of teams we've got in kids party, but I think that
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of them, like we were talking about, it's more for lack of expectations than it is for true lack of noise, if that makes sense. Um,
yeah, I mean, look at that kids party group and tell me how many of those would you have been like, yeah, that's a playoff team. Like, and we got 109. We have Broncos. That could have been a playoff team. Falcons. That could have been a playoff team. Patriots. That could have been one. Texans definitely would have been considering it. So middled through this is the teams that had expectations and did not. And so the teams that did not have expectations, we're generally pulling them down. But the reason that they didn't have expectations is likely because they don't have a great roster and their coaches might be getting fired. So that'll wrap up this segment. Again, if you enjoyed, go ahead, hit subscribe, hit the bell, and next day, tomorrow, you'll be getting that notification that tells you, hey, the full podcast just came out, where you get to hear us talk about our picks as we highlight some of the games moving forward, and then with the past week's recap, kind of go over those as well every single week. So if you're interested, if you did enjoy this video, go ahead and do that. But we're gonna go ahead and transition back into our regularly scheduled podcast. There we go.
and welcome back to all of you normal podcast viewers. We love you a lot. And we'll get into some quick highlights of the week 4 games, and I will once again shout out the link in the description that takes you to our pick'ems, where you can compete against us and you can see our picks live when we make them. So
Yeah,
we are not
I
doing.
and I did slightly better this past week. I didn't. I'm now above 500. Woo! Better than what half of the NFL can say. So I'll take it.
I'm
This was one.
I kind of been cooking this year. I can't lie. I'm 32-16.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back and take a look at years past and see like, okay, what teams here were the were the ones that, or how well did I do through 3 weeks, every year thus far. But I mean, so far this week especially, I did kind of lean more into the favorites. I was like, I'm getting burned too much by picking the underdogs here, so I tried to put more of an emphasis on picking favorites. Unfortunately, all of the games where I would have thought about picking the underdog, those of course won. So my favorites didn't necessarily all the way win, and I did have about 3 underdogs that I picked that did lose. So unhappy about those, but you win some, you lose some. I'll take it. Heading into week 4 though, with
Yeah,
these week 4 matchups.
let's talk about this Ravens Chiefs game. That's kind of the one that stands out as like a overly competitive or overly good matchup. And let's make some picks. Well, one pick at least on this one. I
Mm-hmm.
I think the Ravens overall have looked better than the Chiefs, but that also may just be because I think the Ravens offense looks better than the Chiefs offense does, and I'm not sure how they will match up against each other. The Ravens defense also has not looked spectacular this year. They've let up a lot of points, and that's part of why they came out to this 1-2 start. But I I'll always have that little voice in my head telling me to pick against the Chiefs, and I think I'm gonna do it here, and I'm gonna take the Ravens in this one.
Yeah, here's the thing with, as you mentioned, with their points being let up. This is a team that has played the Bills and the Lions in the first 3 weeks. So, they performed well against the Browns. Sorry, they performed well against the Browns. We don't know what this defense is, really, because you put them against 2 of the greatest and then one of the worst. So this is the litmus test game, because the Chiefs, they're not one of the greatest offenses. They have been very middle. They don't really have a great run game, and the passing game is fluky. So this is the litmus test for the Ravens defense. This is the game they're going to come out knowing that they have to win. And I think that this is one that they will win off the back of a really electrified defense, because we've seen the Chiefs, win narrow games versus top AFC opponents all the time. But the Chiefs defense, I don't feel like can do what the Lions just did to the Ravens. I don't think that they can do what the Browns just did, where we are seeing Derrick Henry limited in each of these 2 games. I don't think the Chiefs can do that. As you pointed out with the Giants rush game versus the Chiefs, it was kind of getting a little gashy here and there. And if a gash happens for Derrick Henry, it's a touchdown. it's going to be a 60-yard touchdown. And I think that those, electric defensive plays for the Ravens might come back against the Chiefs in this one. While the Chiefs don't have the defense to stop Derrick Henry, they don't have the defense to stop the team. And their offense really, while it may perform well versus this defense, as I said, I think this defense comes with an extra bit of energy. And so I think the Ravens walk away with the win in this one as well, playing at Arrowhead.
Yeah, that's another big thing because it's at Arrowhead. But
Mm-hmm.
all you beautiful people watching, if you would like to drop your comments down below on the Ravens versus the Chiefs as our highlight game this week, and let us know what you think will happen. If you think the Chiefs are going to return to form of one of the greatest teams in the league, or if you think they'll kind of sputter a little bit, get off to a 1-3 start. One of these teams is going to be off to a 1-3 start, and I think that's something, man.
That's
that
a
is
story in
truly
itself. Yep.
something. But I don't have anything else, any other topics that I would particularly like to get into. If you do, you have anything, or would you like to wrap this one?
No. I think we didn't really mention some of the big things that went on. I.e. the Bengals versus Vikings. That was one of our highlight games from prior. That backup duel. Carson Wentz looked great.
Isaiah
The
Rodgers
noise.
looked amazing on defense.
Yeah, if we had some noise for the for JJ McCarthy, if he was on that thing, we might have had something there. But that's all I've got, and we can go ahead and close out this podcast. So thank you all for watching, and like always, deuces.
Deuces.